Welcome to the One Player Podcast, the show on solitaire board games. I'm your host, Albert, and this is episode 357.
I am one with the past. I am one with the past. We're meditating.
Okay. I thought that you said you're one with the past. I thought you were saying you're getting old. I thought that's what you meant by that.
No, we're meditating on our past lives and our old selves.
Okay. So
I've not
why
played this
is
game
that?
before. But we're talking about
Okay.
Anamnesis, and it seems like it's all about, and I'm going to use a Jewish mythological term, but Gilgulim, reincarnation, it seems to be what it's saying it's about.
Okay, it is not about Gilgulum. It is about forgetting your past, forgetting who you are, and trying to relearn that.
So not like past selves, like, you know, previous reincarnations.
No, like last week self. That's what it is.
That was myself.
Yeah.
I see there's
And it
definitely
still
some
is, you just don't
philosophies that are
realize
going
it.
on here.
Yeah. Right. So did you say the name of the game? Anamnesis.
Anamnesis. Which to my understanding, anamnesis is the Hebrew term Gilgulim, where you are talking about, your past lives, your reincarnated previous lives is my understanding of that term.
Oh, okay. I'd never heard the word before today. No, actually not true. Before playing this game, before getting this game even. It was a new word to me and I hadn't looked it up honestly. I just went with it. So yeah, today's game is Anamnesis. It is a solo journaling game, so it's a role playing game. It is designed by who? I will tell you real quick.
No, you're not going to tell real quick.
No, but I should be able to. Well,
I mean, they didn't put their name on there very well.
no, hang on, damn obsessed. Is it in here? No, it'll be over here on my shelf. Ow. So the game is designed by Samantha Lee, or Leigh. I guess that's Lee.
I don't know.
Anyway, it's a solo journaling game, which generally speaking means it's a small book. What is that called? Like a tabloid size, or half a sheet of letter paper folded in half, basically. And it's only 24 pages, so a little tiny game. As I said, it's a game in which you have woken up and you don't remember who you are. You're not sure where you are or why you're there or nothing. And you're going to play through figuring these things out, discovering who you are, and playing through that and developing that story as you go along. It's like the other solo journey games we talked about in there. You're drawing cards, and those cards lead to prompts that drive the story forward. What makes this one a little bit different is that instead of using playing cards, it's using tarot cards. So that's a little bit unique, and what that adds, it just adds more variety to the game, and more ways to use the cards. Because I don't know how familiar you are with tarot cards, but there's a minor arcana and a major arcana, and the minor arcana is basically traditional playing cards plus maybe one more, and the major arcana is then another set of cards that are numbered from 0 to 23, I think.
And I'm only familiar with it in as much as it's referenced sometimes in Arkham Horror stuff.
Okay, we could talk a little more about that if it's needed, but I don't think it is.
No, it's not.
All you would need to know is that you couldn't use a regular deck of cards. You need something a little bit different.
So if you don't have a set of tarot cards, you're just stuck?
I bet you can find a digital version of a tarot card, just like you can online for playing cards.
Okay.
But it would help. It definitely would help if you had actual cards. And even if they're digital, I guess it's fine. Let's talk about the components first then. It's a book. The cover is grayscale. I find it to be a little bit creepy of a picture, but it's fine. The insides, I think, Julius, you've got pictures of the insides. There's not a lot of information on each page. It's rather light, and that's pretty typical for a lot of journaling games. There isn't a lot of information in it because there's not a lot of backstory in these games. This one especially, since there is no backstory. They could just eschew all that. Some of the other games will, oh yeah, so the setting is a cyberpunk world, and the world is collapsed and blah 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 whatever. This doesn't have any of that. That's up to you to decide. So that is all you get. Besides that, you'll need a tarot deck, pencil and paper, or something else to journal in. And as in other games, it could be written on paper, it could be typed into a computer, it could be voice recordings, you could draw it, whatever suits you. That's it for the components. It's not a whole lot.
How do you like the graphic design for what's being provided, though? I mean, from what it looks like to me, there is no graphic design.
There is no graphic. The layout, it looks fine. It does not look unattractive. It's well laid out. It's clear. The font is big. The way it is laid out, the game is played over 5 acts. As
Mm-hmm.
you play it, each act has a 2-page spread, so that you open it up to that 2-page spread, and you're able to play on those 2 pages. Move on to the next act. Flip the pages again. So it makes it pretty easy to play. There's no flipping through back and forth as you're going through. If there is, it's to reference something if you have some sort of question, which is not too likely to come up. So yeah, I found it. I find it very useful. A lot of these games, I always feel cheated because the text is so big. I feel, oh, there should be a lot more information. It should be smaller text, but it doesn't really need more. That's they're relatively simple games. In a way, they're overproduced because they're so simple games. And that's almost more on me because I like buying the physical version. You could also get the PDFs of a lot of these, and that tends to be cheaper. And I think that makes it less expensive. So the theme is very vague. All you know is you've woken up in a city or some sort of urban place. You're at a location. It does it. The first time I assumed it's a room, but it's not even necessarily a room. I guess you could wake up in a park or somewhere. You've woken up somewhere at a location, and as you start waking up and figuring out who you are and where you are and all that, you will start filling in that story yourself. So the theme works pretty well. Um, I think that's generally true for the role playing games. It's the more you put into the theme, the more you get out of it. It really is up to you. I think when it comes to journaling games, the in terms of is the setting fantasy or science fiction or modern, again that is entirely ambiguous. That could be whatever you choose. And I've played this multiple times, and I've played it with different decks, and every time it's felt different and been a different setting pretty much. Yeah. The rules of this game. So this game is, I said, it's played in 5 acts. What you're going to do for each game is you're going to first draw one card from the major arcana, and you're going to look at that card, and each card has a name and some art on it. And if you use the tarot, they're different archetypes, and each card tends to have some sort of meaning behind, a lot of meaning behind the character, or whatever the card is, what it represents. There's, for example, the first card is called the Fool, number 0, and it represents somebody that's young or naive or starting a journey, innocence, things like this. Other cards represent different things. There's a whole, but like I said, there's 20, 23, 24. You're going to start by drawing one card from that deck at random, and that card's going to represent who you are. The rules tell you that you could either use the traditional meaning of the tarot cards based on the rule book or the book that came with your tarot deck, or you could use it based off the art. You might look at the art and say, "Oh, this picture has a person that looks like a race car driver. I think I'm going to make my character a race car driver." That would work too. It's totally up to you how you interpret the card. But that first card now represents you. You can have that card set aside throughout the game to remind you about what type of character you're playing. Once you've done that, you're going to shuffle the 4 suits of cards separately into 4 piles, and each pile will be used in one of the first four acts. In the It tells you which suit to use for each act, but I don't think it really matters because again, it's just 13 or 14 cards that you're going to use for each act, and I guess the art matters for how I interpret it, but really, when you're looking at the prompt, just the card's value is what matters. Anyway, so you're going to
When
shuffle
you
it.
say the art, you're just talking about whatever specific tarot deck you have.
Yes, the art and yes. So when you draw the card, the way you interpret your prompt is the prompt will tell you something. And let me jump in here. So for the first part of the first act, you wake up in this room. You don't know who you are or anything. You start looking around. So the first act is really about figuring out a little bit about who you are and what you're like. The second act is then you leave the location you're at and you start kind of wandering around the city and exploring. So now you're starting to learn a little bit about the city and the environment, and so more about where you fit in. The third act, you get home, and now you I don't know how you found your home, but you found your home, and you're now exploring your home and seeing the stuff around you. So now you start to learning more about yourself and intimate details about yourself and your backstory, I guess. The fourth act, what was the fourth act? I find this one a little weird, but you're going to start figuring out, based on everything you've already learned about yourself up to the present, how does everything you've now come to realize affect who you are, and do you do stuff about it, change it, or keep it the way you are? And the fifth act is then really just go through the major arcana again and pick a new card to represent yourself after everything that's happened, who you've become. And it could be the same card or a different card. So for that first act, for example, one of the prompts is there's a word on the tip of your tongue. Which word is this? So you would draw the card from the deck and you would get the seven, and that was a prompt. Now, how you want to interpret that has to do with the art on the card or the meaning of whatever the seven of pentacles card is, according to the tarot interpretations. So the art in the card matters. If you have two different decks, they could be very different. Some are dark, some are happier, some are just more traditional or fashion. You could get like Marvel tarot decks and cartoon tarot decks, and you could get weird, creepy tarot decks and all that. Besides using the card for the interpretation, though, the other thing you can do is now you're going to draw a card from the major arcana again, and whatever card you draw, that determines pretty much the subject of what your prompt is. So that prompt we drew was there's a word on the tip of my mouth. What word is this? Well, now I draw a card from major arcana, and I don't know. Maybe the person is the card is like what is one the Hierophant, which I don't know what the Hierophant means, but it's some sort of leader maybe or something. So now you can think, okay, so I have a word in the tip of my tongue about some sort of leader, and how do I incorporate this into my story? And you start writing about that prompt. It's at first it's really hard because you have no information. It's a complete blank slate. So what are you going to write when you have a word on the tip of your tongue about somebody that you consider the Hierophant, and your card is the Fool, somebody that's naive and young? That could go so many places really from the very beginning. It could be hard to start. But anyway, you're going to do this 3 times for the act. Draw 3 cards after each, for each card, draw a card from the major arcana to tell you how to interpret the first one and the prompt. Do your journaling, and then do the second card and then the third card. Once you've done the 3 cards, you'll reshuffle those major arcana cards back into the deck, pull out the second deck, the swords, and go through those prompts where you're now learning, you're walking around in the city or town or whatever it is and learning more by doing more prompts. And again, same thing for the third act and the fourth act. Each time you're going to draw a card from the major arcana and a prompt card and combine those two to come up with some unique prompt. So that's how the game works. It is. Any thoughts on that, Julius? Any questions or anything?
I mean, definitely thoughts, but no
Yeah,
questions.
your face kind of looks like what? And what are you talking about, Albert?
I mean, I get what you're saying. Here's a word and a bare minimum amount of prompt, and go use creativity to write something. I feel like
Yeah,
we've got into this conversation so many times.
yeah, you're right. It's all these games are very similar, and they're all different, and a lot of it I think is because of the theme or the details of the prompts.
There's almost no
Um,
theme. There's almost no prompt.
so
This
yeah,
one's even not
there
difficult because
is
there's nothing there.
there's there's all prompt. There's no theme. It could almost be like Apple and Cage come up with a story based on that. What? That's really hard. That's so open ended. And so every time I play, I start and I feel very intimidated. I don't know what I'm doing. It kind of feels weird. I have to write about who I am and my personality and my feelings and all that, and that makes me a little uncomfortable, honestly. But you start doing it anyway, and you keep going. And every time I've played, it ends up feeling very satisfying at the end. It's always weird. I don't know. You start writing, you have no idea where you're starting, and it never ends where you expect it to. And as you're going, it keeps you're not sure where it's going to go, and then it ends. And it I have found every time it feels very satisfying. So it is an interesting game to play. I also found that I really enjoy trying it with a different deck to see how that's gonna feel. The first time I played it, I think I used um a deck themed about the labyrinth, the movie The Labyrinth with what was his name, David Bowie in it. I don't remember the actress's name. And it's his wood card style deck, and I played it, and it felt like a very nice fantasy setting. In my mind, it was sort of like a D&D setting. I don't know why. I think because of the art on the cards. And the story ended up being about a woman that was wandering around. She didn't know where, and she seemed to be somebody important in some sort of church in this fantasy setting. And she got home, and in the end, I find out that the character I'm playing is pregnant, and it's going to change her life around a lot. And I don't remember the details of how it came out, but it's nothing I would have ever come up on my own. Very different from anything I would have done. I think the second time I played, I used a different deck that was. I found this one on clearance at Barnes and Noble, and it's a Cthulhu deck. I said, "Oh, cool! I like Cthulhu." Um, it's a very dark deck. I don't think I really like the art on it a whole lot personally, but whatever. I went with it, and obviously inspired by it, the setting ended up being a relatively modern, a detective going around investigating some sort of crimes. It just sounds very Call of Cthulhu-ish. So the deck definitely inspired where my mind was going and all that. But it ended up being more of a modern crime dealing with the mob, and there was no weird cosmic horrors in it or anything. It was just a pulp type story, really, and not something I would ever come up with. Mm, just to give you an idea of how the different decks could inspire. Sorry, it's just to give you an idea how the different deck could inspire the story. I don't know that I find that second one interesting. I think the fact that a different deck can potentially change it or lead it a very different way makes me want to play it again and go find another deck to play it with again. It is, yeah, I don't know. It's an odd game, and I do enjoy it. I've enjoyed it every time, and the stories have always been satisfying. I haven't played it correctly every time. Like I think the first time I played it, I forgot that I was supposed to draw a card from that major arcana each time to influence the prompt, and just drawing the first card, it worked just fine. It I think if I had drawn that major arcana, it would have added a little more variety, maybe a little bit more twists. But I didn't feel any of that was really lacking as I played through it. I find it a little tedious to have to go and reshuffle the decks each time because these cards tend to be bigger and a little more awkward, harder to shuffle. I find than a regular standard deck of playing cards. Yeah, one thing I really like also is the way it's split into four acts, so that the story, unlike some of the other games where you're just drawing cards at random each time, this one actually has some progression. You go through the first three prompts, and you're in a certain setting that says, okay, that's changed, and I'm going to be over here, and this is going to be different. The story's less about figuring out who you are out, like what you look like or whatever, what your thoughts are, to here's the world around me. So each act it progresses, and I kind of wish there were more games like that would have you more deliberately progress from one scene to another, which is effectively what was going on here. I don't know if "scene's" the right word, but yeah, it gave it more of a traditional story arc, I guess. Like like the 5-act play sort of type of story arc thing. I would like to see more games with that. Um, so there we go. That is Anamnesis. I don't have a whole lot to say about the game because it's a small game.
If it's a game.
Yeah, you struggle with solo role playing games being games.
I
I
really
mean,
do.
yeah, I don't know what to say. I definitely doesn't feel like a game where there's luck and all that because there's no winning or losing necessarily. I,
There's almost no rules.
there's rules. It's driven by a set of rules. It's not gaming, right? And like like D&D, it in a way is similar, and it's a role playing game in that you're playing characters, and the goal isn't specifically to win or lose; it's to play out the story. And yes, you're hoping to win, and you're hoping things turn out for the best always, but that never is really the point of the game, right? The bigger difference being that D&D is more social interacting, and there's more. specific things like combats with outcomes. Where here it's all very very touchy feely, where you're just progressing through the story. There are definitely games like coming soonish. We're going to be talking about Colossal, probably not until like January, I'm guessing, at our rate. Um, that one you do have
Too many good
combat,
games.
and yeah, yeah, you draw cards to see who's gonna win or lose in the fight, and the fight goes that way, so it progresses that way. But it's still very much about the story, way more than it is about any of the attributes and the rolling and that kind of thing. So yeah, I don't know. I know what you're saying. This doesn't feel like a game the same way, say, Pandemic felt like a game last week. I don't know. I think it's a game.
Yeah, I would definitely struggle if we did popular mechanics on it. I mean, I understand that you like it. I understand that you
Mm-hmm.
enjoy it. And, puzzle games, for example, I know a lot of people find those to not be games. Escape room games, people find those not to be
Mm-hmm.
games, and I do. And I greatly enjoy those, and I espouse my enjoyment for those. So, I mean, everyone to their own things. But yeah, this one just,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
suppose, continues to come up.
Yep. That's. I was thinking of something similar today. I wish I remember what it was. It's not game related at all, but yeah, a similar sort of thing. Of if you enjoy it and it's something you want to do in that environment, like I enjoy it as a gaming experience, as a relaxation activity of play. So for me, it's a game. You don't enjoy it as an activity of play. You'd rather play other ways. So for you, it's not a game. And that seems like a valid way to look at it, because for me, well, I don't know. I'm just rambling here. I'm just making talk because, man, this was short.
Well, I guess short it is this week.
Yeah, there we
I'm
go.
sure we'll have a
It's
lot more to talk about the game for next week.
Yeah, if we could remember
We'll
what
make
game it
up
was.
for it with next week. I know what it is. I'm not spoiling the mystery.
There we go. So yeah, so I would just say I really enjoyed this game. I thought it was really good. It's been one of my favorite ones so far that I've played, especially of the small, simple format like this, where it's just a prompt and you're playing through once from beginning to end, versus the longer campaigning games like Iron Sworn. I've enjoyed this one a lot.
So you don't think you'll ever forget about it? It won't ever be in the past?
I don't think I'll forget about it. No. All right, Julius. Thank you for that. That was a good ending to that
I
story.
always have to end on at least one. All right. Have a good evening, everyone.
All right. Yep. Bye bye.
Thanks for listening. We love feedback, so we love hearing from you. You can reach me at julius@oneplayerpodcast.com or JLBird on BGG, and Albert can be reached at albert@oneplayerpodcast.com or Fractalune on BGG. Our website is oneplayerpodcast.com with the number 1, and we're also on Twitter at oneplayerpodcast. The intro music is copyright Angus, can be found at jamendo.com. The transition music is copyright by Dan Elduce Pancaldi, whose page is at donpancaldi.com. The One Player Podcast is protected under a Creative Commons share-alike license. Thanks for listening.